question was, how do you help your team when you're working from home from a sales productivity perspective?
It's a good question. We've actually had a great opportunity to work with a bunch of our customers on that part. So I've got to see how a bunch of different people are handling it in 2020. It's a tough one, right? Especially when you're dealing with social individuals who like being in an office together or like being in front of customers. It's a big change. And so not to underscore that too much, but it is going to be tough and it is going to be a change for everybody. What we've done and what we've seen working for other people is finding ways to stay connected and provide a routine for that day, so that it doesn't feel like you roll out of bed, you eat breakfast and then work, and then at some point that stops and you go back to bed and it's just the next day again, like Groundhog Day. And so establishing those morning routines, establishing those end of day routines help give people structure, help the team stay connected, get them in that pattern so they will do it and they don't just kind of self-isolate. That's been a big one that I've seen helping.
Nice. I love that, because your brain needs that sort of texture to the day.
Mm-hmm.
If it's stand up, go to your computer, go to bed, like you finish work, play video games, make dinner, etc., like whatever, or you're in front of your TV, you're not really moving around like physically. So having that, doing things to encourage exercise, massive. I don't know, like since the pandemic started, it feels like time accelerated and slowed down at the same time.
Definitely. It's weird, eh?
Yeah, super strange one. But you like trying to think back, like, oh, when did this happen? Was that last week? And somebody's like, no, it was 3 months ago. Like, I'm not going into the office, so there's no physical experience for your brain to attach to. And so I think that's one of the things that's been proven to aid in the recall is the physical environment that you're in. So bit of a tangent there. I'm going to read one we actually had this question from the team over at Close.io. They had asked a very similar question, and I pushed it to Julian, who's head of our Rev team. I think we call him Supreme Leader of the Rev team. Julian, maybe you can, I don't know where that came from. But basically, number one tip to keep sales rep engaged for Julian, it really comes down to empathy. But what I mean by that is it's never been more important to put yourself in the rep's shoes and determine how you can engage each individual uniquely. You can't have a blanket approach here, as what works for one team member might create the opposite behavior for another. That said, there are a couple things that I tend to focus on as table stakes in a remote culture. First, make sure you're over communicating on expectations and on the directional vision of the organization. Second, make sure you're available to your team. Don't push meetings. And FaceTime with each of your reps has never been more important and impactful. Love Julian. I think if I could pick what's his superpower, it's definitely the people side of things. If you were looking at like him as a superhero, definitely the people side. And the one thing that I'll add that I think he sort of highlighted is the writing it down. When he's talking about over communicating, it's not just talking to them. It's not just sending them messages on Slack. It's not just sharing in meetings. It's writing it down, getting it on paper or in a Google Doc where people can see it and live it, because it's got to be absolutely everywhere. We're not seeing each other. It's way too easy for something to get posted in Slack and get missed.
Definitely.
So I'll throw it to chat. What's your number one tip to keep sort of remote sales teams more engaged? I would say, let me think on this one. So from my perspective, if I was building on what Julian had to say, yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of people talk about, and honestly, one of my biggest concerns with going to, and this is before we were working remotely, was like, well, if you're working from home, are people are they gonna show up? Right? Like, are they going to be on their computers? It wasn't a rational fear. It was one of those like irrational, like, well, the office keeps people, honest, because you can see when they show up and when they're not showing up. You can visually see that. And honestly, I think the working remotely has had the opposite effect, in that I see our team. Well, I can't physically see them, but I can see them in Slack and I can see them on Zoom and I can see it when they send me emails at hours when they should be not working and relaxing. We've had the opposite problem, is that people are actually spending more work or more time at the computer. I know for myself, I wake up, deal with the kids, come to my computer, and now I'm at work. And then when is it time to knock off? It's like when it's time to put the kids to bed. It's like,
Yep.
okay. Or like play with the kids, feed them dinner, put them to bed. And so it's the idea that the job expands to fit within the time allotted. And so like, I think your first piece was those bookends, right? And adding some texture to the week. If you don't have those bookends, then it's very easy for the job to expand into which the time you have available.
Yeah.